friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
So even in an arena full of nerds, this might be the nerdiest we have gone to date. Jake, what do you think?
I'm so proud of us because there is so much like this arena that we live in has become so saturated, and that's not a bad thing. I am not being that guy, but man, like you said, in a world of nerds, we have found a way to be nerds, and we are truly the nerd's nerd is how I like to think of myself after tonight. This is the turning point where, as the nerd word has been watered down, we are here to truly reclaim it with our long boxes held high and our pocket protectors shined and ready. Tonight, we become the nerd's nerds.
I feel like wielding our 20-sided die and our original first run of comic collections, that we can step into the nerdery and rule the entire arena. I think we're ready for that. But we also are men of the people. We want to respect the people that are a little more novice in this arena as well, and we want to say we see you. So as we talked about in our production meeting, a la a text message strand earlier yesterday, we are going to keep this a little high level as well in the hopes that this will be appealing for the masses, even though we are going a little hyper niche here for the next half hour or so. So, Jake, this was definitely brought on by you and your recent reading habits and your Twitter storms of the last few days. So why don't you unveil to our lovely listeners what we're about to dive into?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to pause this for 30 seconds to say two things. One, I just adjusted the volume level on the speaker that I plug my headphones into while we do this, and I kind of muttered to myself, I need a little more Mitch in the monitor, and I feel super cool right now. Second thing, if you...
you hit the big time, man. You hit it. You just had that moment where you have the earpiece in your ear and you're like on live television, and then you stop and you put your fingers up to your ear as though you're getting a really important message from your EP, and then you say, hey, we're breaking in here.
Oh, good Lord. I actually just did it as you said it, like without even thinking about like, oh yeah, I could do that. Oh man.
The air is getting thin up here, high society, man.
The other end of this, and I do want to say this for all of our listeners, if you're the type that you've got an opinion on what size bag modern comics should be placed in for their protection, you are going to have all kinds of opinions to throw at us on Twitter, and we welcome them. If you are the type that when I said long box, you thought it was an innuendo, then don't even worry. We're going to keep this one accessible for you, and we're working pretty hard. So that being said, prologue out there. I think tonight would be best opened by saying it's almost a sequel or a spin-off of our episode about the DC Extended Universe, because I had an epiphany in the last few days, and it occurred to me, and we talked about Shazam is coming, and before we did that episode, I was like on board with Shazam, but your passion for it has really gotten me on board with the idea. Shazam is really going to be a big deal. They're dropping Wonder Woman 2 stuff this week, so there's information there, and so it looks like there is a good first step for the DC Extended Universe to move forward. But the big one that I have become so convicted as a nerd, as a comic watcher, and as a podcaster for all of the credibility that gives me, I have become very convinced that the missing piece to the DC Extended Universe, whether you think it's rockin' and don't change a thing, or if you're psyched that Jeff Johns has been moved into a more creative role and they're going to let somebody else handle the business, whatever your opinion may be, I truly believe the next step lies in the hands of a man from the 25th century named Booster Gold. And tonight, we are here to talk about the possibly still happening Booster Gold movie. Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. We have just expanded our own DC universe because we can. We're that good. We're that powerful. Again, we're ruling the nerdery. This is what we do. By the by, If this is your first time listening to the Watching Comics podcast, welcome. We are so happy you're here. Curl up with a good comic and a nice bottle of something stiff, and we will entertain you for the next little bit. If this is not your first time listening to the Watching Comics podcast, welcome back. You know what to do. So Booster Gold, we missed you. Oh, it's been a long week, hasn't it? Booster Gold, with his long flowing blonde locks from the 25th century, coming in, football talent and all, he is going to be blowing us away here for the next few minutes. So ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, is a Booster Gold movie coming? Should it come? And if it does, who should be helming the directorial chair? And who would we cast in the titular role? We're going to kind of go off of that a little bit. So Jake, as you are the token historian of the Watching Comics tribe, I think it is time for you to assume the lectern and to stand in front of the masses and to educate us in maybe 60 seconds or less on the imperatives of what we need to know about Booster Gold before we can discuss key character traits and casting decisions and the like.
All right, brief overview of Booster Gold. Buckle up. Booster Gold.
He's really pretty, by the way. Can I say that?
He's just very aesthetically pleasing.
Is it weird for like another grown man with a family and everything and a job to be able to say that another grown man animated comic book character is very handsome and becoming?
No, I think that to not say that would be to miss the point of Booster Gold. So well done.
Okay, so who's more handsome, Cyclops or Booster Gold?
Oh, Booster Gold. I mean, you gotta factor in personality there. And Cyclops is gonna pay the bills and he's gonna get your mom a card on Mother's Day. But at the end of the day, Booster's gonna make you laugh, and that's gotta be worth something still in this crazy world.
I completely agree.
Man, I just revealed a lot about myself there. So
laughter is the best medicine, and at the end of the day, if you can't laugh with the person that you want to get freaky with, then what's the point?
Right, exactly. Fictional or not. So
I may have just solved the love lives of a lot of people listening.
I think you complicated my own, but we'll move on from it.
Tell Elise I'm sorry.
The E on this week's podcast. Booster Gold is a guy that is really fascinating as a character. The history outside the history is Booster Gold pops up around the mid 80s, actually about a month after my birth, and Booster Gold comes in at a time where
coincidence.
I think
coincidence. Not. I think not.
No, the DC universe at that time had become really, really dark. They were leaning into that 80s darkness that you had in comic books. They were really violent, really aggressive.
That was like Frank Miller Batman Prime.
Yes.
And they were and it was not too long before the death of Superman was coming down the pipe.
Yes. And it was that thing that we do in culture where we overcorrect. So they're like, Batman's got a rainbow bat costume for when he has to win a surf contest against the Joker in the 60s and 70s. And then one day, Frank Miller writes The Dark Knight Returns, and then suddenly everybody's bleeding and is an anti-hero. So it's, we overcorrect. But Booster comes along at just the right time, and he lightens the mood a little bit, but he does it in this way where after a while, he becomes a character that is funny and goofy, but is defined by some tragedy around him, and he carries this weight with him. Booster Gold is a guy named Michael John Carter, who is from the 25th century, and he is a disgraced former college football player because of a scandal he was involved in, who, with nothing else to do, takes a job working at a museum where he steals some superhero gear, including a time travel device and some super strength stuff. And he says, screw it. If I'm going to be a loser in the 25th century, I'll go back and be a celebrity in the 20th or 21st centuries. And so he time travels
naturally.
Back. Right. Who among us has not had that dream?
Anybody would have arrived at that. I mean, it's like a kid in King Arthur's court. It's like you go back in time and you wow everybody with a Big Mac. You know what I mean?
This is basically spoiler alerts for Johnny Manziel in a few years. And I've been working on that one all day.
Oh my gosh, dude! I didn't even make that connection. Johnny Manziel is totally Booster Gold.
He absolutely is. And for a moment, when I was workshopping that joke, it was going to be Baker Mayfield. It was like, nah, not there yet. Too soon.
Give him 2 years to fall flat on his face, and then it'll be all right.
So Booster Gold. The other thing you need to know, that's really, enough if you know what I just said. The other thing to know is that Booster Gold really came into his own as a character when he got paired up with a guy named the Blue Beetle, and they started a comic book called Blue and Gold. And Blue Beetle and Booster Gold were the original bromance of the 90s comic book world. They were kind of the jokers that were at the peripheral of the Justice League pulling pranks on the, Batman scowls too much, so they put like shaving cream in his cowl or something. I don't know, but they would mess with
Blue Beetle move. Classic.
Right, yeah. they would mess with the other guys, but there was always this undercurrent of seriousness to it. I won't go into all the other details about how Booster's been done wrong in the last 10 years, how they're getting him right again. I won't mess with all that. The only other thing, he's got a robot sidekick named Skeets. There you go. You're up to speed.
I say Skeets is a great pet name. I'm going to pocket that one for the future.
Yeah. The next hairless cat is definitely named Skeets.
Can I throw a not so popular and maybe outlandish conspiracy theory about Booster Gold?
Please.
Maybe the scandal that sparred all of this was not because of some weird scandal thing, but because the guy has 3 first names, and we all know you can't trust a person with 3 first names. Michael John Carter.
Really
that's it, man. Michael John Carter. Immediately when you hear his surname, Michael John Carter, immediately that is someone that the question mark is always going to be next to the word trust.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. Life lessons all around on watching comics this week.
Boom.
How to pick a man based on a comic book cover. Not to trust people based on the number of first names. We're basically putting together a guide for life here, people.
We're dropping all kinds of truth bombs here. Now, I need to just set the record straight, and I'm really grateful that you told me before we started recording that you are starting to see the light a little bit. So we've hinted at this in previous episodes, the concept of Booster Gold and wanting to see it on screen. Jake, you have said it both on the internet in the podcast form and in Twitter form that you are on the Nathan Fillion camp for Booster Gold casting. And as anybody that listens to me knows, that I am not I'm not a card carrying member of the Nathan Fillion fan club, nor will I ever be. So I'm glad that you're starting to see the other side. You said that you came prepared to talk about some casting choices, and you are not going to talk about Nathan Fillion. So let's first of all just lay that to rest. Let's just say that Nathan Fillion, even if you like him, is just kind of charming, but not really charming, and mostly overrated from a talent standpoint. And I'm just not.
Can I cut in and say you just described Booster Gold?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like Nathan Fillion is not charismatic enough to be Booster Gold. Nathan Fillion does not have the kind of chops to be able to carry an IP spandex heavy, I want to make $500 million in the box office type of movie kind of chops.
Yeah, so the reason I wouldn't say I'm off the Fillion bandwagon for this. I would say the Fillion bandwagon reached the end of the line and was decommissioned to make way for a younger bandwagon, because the reality is that when those of us because I am firmly on the Nathan Fillion train, I'm a fan of his, and a lot of that, like most people who are fans of his, it does go back to Firefly. And Nathan, if you're listening, I'm sorry that I can't just let you move beyond that role, but it was good for me. I really liked it, and so but
he's getting up there in age. He's like 45, isn't he?
Yeah, well, and that's just it, is like you're talking about a character who is supposed to be a few years removed from a college football career falling apart. And much as I love Nathan Fillion and I like him as Captain Hammer, and Castle is a great show to just watch when you don't need to really think too hard about anything, and that's not a shot at it, it's just the genre it occupies. But the reality is that Nathan Fillion, when we want him for this role, those of us who do, we're talking about Captain Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly, not Richard Castle. And Nathan Fillion is just kind of left the zone where he would work in that role. And it's sad that this movie didn't get made in the mid 2000s for that purpose, but it's also not the end of the world, because I think there are plenty of people that could do this part. And maybe you get Nathan Fillion a cameo in there. He actually also, for the record, is and has appeared in promotional material as a different character who's yet to appear on screen in the Marvel universe. So he's booked up. So,
and also, if we were going to do this in the mid 2000s, all the directors I came prepared to talk about probably wouldn't have been tapped yet, because I'm kind of going into the younger in their career route, and this is a really good time for a few of the guys that I'm going to talk about. But okay, so we're moving on from Nathan Fillion because we're making better decisions.
So we're done with that. Either way you fall on it, not an option.
Okay, so tell me your first choice left, or the next choice you have for casting Booster.
Okay, so this was a stressful one for me, and I only came prepared with one, and I know you've got a few. For me, it was more about finding the right guy more than doing a casting call. And so for me, I really racked my brain on it, because I think you need somebody who is going to be charming effortlessly, who is going to be able to have that kind of roguish energy about him. You're talking about a Han Solo, or to be more contemporary, you're talking about a Star-Lord kind of character. You need somebody with a Chris Pratt energy, frankly. And the more I got to thinking about it, I want to be gutsy on this one, and I want to suggest somebody who I think can carry the dramatic end of it as well. And I'm going to go with Liam Hemsworth for the role of Booster Gold, because here's where I come down on it. And I YouTubed a few things, because when I had that idea, I was like, yeah, but is he funny? Like, that's not fair to him to say his brother's funny, so he is. And so I did a little bit of YouTubing some bits he's done here and there. You put
on your lab coat and you did some investigating.
I did. I went, I got the team involved. We did an investigative report. And I came away with he has done some bits where he can be very funny. I don't know if he can carry a movie with his comedy, but I do think that he's got what it would take to be Booster Gold. He could convincingly play a washed up former college football star. He could be sleazy and grow into heroic, because that's Booster's trajectory. He starts out as a pretty, selfish, glory-seeking guy, and he starts to grow into the role. And I think that I think Liam could carry it. I think he could do the role really well.
That's a really interesting choice, and he was not on my radar. I applaud you for making that choice, because I think it rides that perfect line that I think can be found in a lot of the superhero movies, with this concept of like, he's familiar but not quite familiar enough, so it could be a home run. And that's exactly what we had with Chris Evans as Captain America. Like, when he was cast as Captain America, you're like, holy crap, he looks the part. And we're familiar enough with him that we'd be like, yeah, he's probably got what it takes. But we also didn't know that it was potentially going to be this much of lightning in a bottle. So it was kind of like a little bit of surprise alongside that little bit of legitimacy. And I think Liam Hemsworth can kind of scratch both of those itches if we're talking just strictly formula is concerned. So that's a good choice. I would definitely put that one on the list. And
yes.
The interesting thing about Booster Gold is that you kind of alluded to it. I think the top two choices, if we're just talking about if anybody was available, and we're talking about a damn near perfect fit for this character, the top two choices would have to be Chris Pratt and Ryan Reynolds, right? Like,
that's exactly what I thought. Yes.
When I was thinking about this, I was like, man, I just really want to put Chris Pratt in this. Can I just like, it's DC. Can we just like give him 2 contracts, please? Like, come on. Give him a third IP, because he's also trying to do Jurassic Park still. But like Chris, like as good as Guardians of the Galaxy is, which it is phenomenal in some of Marvel's high spots. I'm not suggesting that we need to get rid of it or forget it, but I mean, come on, if anybody knows the Booster Gold character for 5 seconds, they know that Chris Pratt, as of right now at this moment in time, if you're picking someone that is a known entity and not risking to go with someone that's relatively unknown, Chris Pratt's your number one choice, closely followed by Ryan Reynolds. But obviously those guys have their tights tied up into long, lengthy, big payday contracts. So that ain't happening. I put together a short list of some dudes here, and kind of just varying different qualities. Some were based on acting chops. Some were based on only look. Some were based on comedy. Some were based on drama. Some were based on someone that I think could probably do it, but was more of a bigger name reach just because this is a lesser known character, kind of like what they did with Brie Larson in Captain Marvel. She signed on for that movie right after she won her Oscar, that sort of thing. Because, Captain Marvel's not nearly as popular as Iron Man is, those sorts of things. So short list here. I've got Edward Norton, but we run into the same problem we run into with Nathan Fillion, which is Ed Norton's like 47, even though he still looks like he's 32 sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I kind of fall into this trap where, like, if I'm looking to try to recast someone that's in that 30 to 50 age, like reasonably good looking, but still needs some talented white guy type of roles, I constantly say Edward Norton because he's one of my favorite actors and he can literally do anything. He really can. So it's kind of a cop-out for me to say that.
We've gone to the Edward Norton well a few times on the show, but it's always a good well to go to, though, right? Like,
it is a good well to go to.
I mean, you could cast him, and I mean, I'm not trying to steal your thunder because I know this is your guy, but you really, minus the potential, and I've never really known what to believe, but minus the potential behind the scenes issues that can come up with his temperament, I really think you can cast that guy in nearly any role and trust him to get it right. He's so talented.
I completely agree. Couldn't agree with you more. A couple of other options. Let me just say the left field option that I really wanted to put out on Twitter, but I didn't because I wanted to think about it more. And I did think about it, and I'm just going to keep it here on the podcast, is if he wanted to commit the year or so it would take to not only lose weight, but get buff, and then probably do a Tom Cruise and stand on wooden boxes for a lot of filming to look a little bit taller, I think Jonah Hill could do it.
Ooh, okay.
Because Jonah Hill's low-key becoming one of my favorite current actors in the game right now. I firmly believe he's with Kristen Wiig with the off-kilter choice to win an Oscar someday. Dude's already been nominated twice.
Well, I was going to say, he's been up there on the podium. He just hasn't gotten the win yet.
Yeah, he's really, really good, but he's also got that crazy comedic timing and in-your-face visceral levels of just comedy genius that he could do. And I think he represents both ranges at their extreme in the single person, but obviously the look is not there. He would have to get a believable hairpiece and really have to commit to the body, like do an Edward Norton in American History X type of transformation. So he's not really on my list, but I don't know, could maybe be.
It's Ben a fascinating Foster, what if. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it is a fascinating what if. Ben Foster's on the list because if you're just going for youngish guys in their 30s who look almost exactly like Booster Gold and have a history of playing these type of characters, Ben Foster is your guy. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Google Ben Foster and then Google Booster Gold and look at them side by side and realize that they're doppelgangers. Ryan Gosling is the low-hanging fruit here.
Yeah,
he's the one.
My mind.
He's the one where if you really just want to make a splash and say, we got a big name to do this and he looks a lot like him and he's got acting chops to do anything, so we'll just let him go on screen and do whatever he wants. Ryan Gosling's the guy. And I don't think it's a realistic choice. Probably the most realistic choice I've got on my list, if he is able to go the comedic route as much as he would need to, would be Alexander Skarsgård. He looks the part. He is sleek. He is handsome. He could 100% be believable as a high quality athlete. And he's got underrated acting chops and says yes to a lot of very diverse work, but most of it edges on the dramatic thriller side. So he would have to prove that he can do the Vince Vaughn, Ryan Reynolds type of sharp, witty stuff. And if he could do that, I think he would be a darn near perfect fit.
I think he might be. I mean, I'm obviously just getting your list because we strive for realistic, real-time responses on this show. but I think he might be my favorite on your list there.
Yeah.
And I like everything you're throwing out, but for some reason, Skarsgård is just really standing out to me as he could do that role. Can I also tell you that when you first said it, I did what I think a lot of people do, and I thought you meant his brother, Bill, who he Pennywise the Clown most recently?
He was Pennywise the Clown and the acidic vomiter in Deadpool 2.
Yes, yeah.
But
that's all.
There's like 12 Skarsgårds, and they're all sons of Skellen, so it's like tough to keep them all straight. They're like the new age of the Baldwin brothers.
I was gonna say it's like back in the day, it was like everybody was a Baldwin, and now it's like everybody's a Skarsgård.
Yeah. All right. So, solid choices. I feel like there's some traction there.
Yeah, I really think you could take that list in to a casting breakdown, and you could I think you'd have the advantage of just trying to match the script, because I think everybody on that list we just produced, well, obviously it's our list, so I think that, but I think it's a good list.
Yeah, listen, right. Okay, so who would you tap for director?
So we can't talk about this without talking about the fact that technically the Booster Gold film that has been in the works for 3 or 4 years now, but with no real traction on it, technically it has a director attached. And apparently in March, I believe, when I was doing some reading for this episode, I missed this news, but apparently in March they turned in a script and they're thinking it's about to move forward. The director who's currently attached is Greg Berlanti. I think it's pronounced Berlanti. Who is best known as the creator and, ruler of the Arrowverse, which is the CW, Arrow, Supergirl, Flash. With all respect to a guy that I really enjoy, the Flash, what I've seen of Supergirl looks good, and I just, for whatever reason, I never got to the original one, and I haven't watched Arrow yet. But so with all respect to somebody who knows his craft, I'm not trying to say he's a bad director, but I don't love that pick. And maybe it's because I know him best from the CW shows, but I think that Berlanti is better with the soapier kind of drama. And I say this as an X-Men huge fan. I think he could do X-Men. I think X-Men's got kind of this soap quality to its drama that gets a little over the top sometimes and a little bit weird. And I think he could do that. But Booster Gold to me is a character that is going to require a very subtle touch to balance the tragedy of a guy who basically, he just never had a chance at being anything but a douchebag. And then he manages to transcend that slowly. And it's a character that's going to require growth, and it's going to require nuance. And that relationship with Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, is going to be essential to getting all of that. And I don't know that with what I've seen from him that Berlanti can handle that with the subtle hand where it won't be like, Booster Gold sits down and is like, I've been living the wrong way. And like, we're not going to get those moments of show me, don't tell me with him. I don't know. What do you think on that before we move on?
Berlanti scares me for a few reasons. I will say I watched most of the first season of Arrow. It was bad, and I couldn't continue. I have never read anything that would convince me to go back to the well and give another season another shot. The Green Lantern movie, he was one of the lead producers on. Do I even need to say anything about that movie? We all agree.
I think Ryan Reynolds has said enough about that film for us.
Exactly. So, and in all fairness, I have not started the new Flash series yet, but I have watched a good chunk of Supergirl. Supergirl is pretty good. Could be better, but it's pretty good. Now, Berlanti does have a couple of films under his belt for directing, Life as We Know It and Love, Simon, which are his two most notorious ones out of his short list here. Life as We Know It is a very paint by numbers, but slightly lower quality rom-com with Katherine Heigl. Not awful, but it's exactly what it is, but it's not the high point of the genre. And then Love, Simon, which came out earlier this year, which was actually really good and had a lot of heart and very monumental in a lot of different specific circles. But it was still very much that it was a teenager rom-comedy that was LGBTQ friendly, and I thought it was great, and I thought it was one of the higher points of cinema so far in the first half of the year. But that's still right in that wheelhouse of the I'm gonna follow this formula to give you this type of story, and I'm gonna do it in a teenage wonderland type of thing. And so I just don't know if that fits into Booster Gold. So basically what I'm saying is previous work has dictated that he is not a good fit for Booster Gold unless this is going to be a pivot to more of what he really has the chops for, and he just hasn't had the opportunity to show yet.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I think you're right. And I, and I don't want to, again, I try to be really careful here, and I fail sometimes at this, but I try not to just trash people. Because there's so much of that in the comic
unless it's Joss Whedon, because he just ruins good things.
I try, so I'm not trying to trash Greg Berlanti. I just think that the reason I'm so high on this Booster Gold project is I think that it is an opportunity to do something that is unique and is high quality, in that Booster Gold would have a Guardians of the Galaxy feel, but handled correctly. There are elements in his story of corporate corruption. There's this element of like trying not to be a sellout, but trying to, get yours and trying to make sure that you're taken care of and your loved ones are. And there's that pull between maturity and passion. And there's a nuance that is in the character in the comics when the right team has control of him, that if we could translate that to screen, could elevate I'm not talking about catching the DCEU up with Marvel. I'm talking about it could make it its own thing where we're going to stop talking about catch up and we're going to start talking about them being each their own type of good. And so I say, let's say, I just don't see in Berlanti the depth to do that the right way. And so I don't mean that as a shot at him, who I kind of have wanted to put this guy, my pick, I've wanted to put this guy back in the director's chair since something went wrong. And my pick is Edgar Wright.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. He was one of my three.
Is he? Oh, good. So Edgar Wright, the cliff notes of his story is that he's got this he's a stylish guy. He's got a comedy sensibility. Mitch, you can get more into that. But the thing for me with Edgar Wright is he wrote and was going to direct the original screenplay to Ant-Man, which Ant-Man is a fine movie. It's not a bad movie. I also think that it is not the movie it could have been. And I have read multiple.
Oh my gosh. Ant-Man would have been way more remarkable had Edgar Wright been driving that ship.
Well, and I've had multiple interviews I've read where somebody in the know has stated that the Edgar Wright Ant-Man script was Oscar material, that it was the greatest thing Marvel ever had their hands on. And it actually, the loss of Edgar Wright, who left because of studio meddling, was actually the tipping point from all appearances from the outside, was the tipping point where Disney came in and said, we're going to put this thing in Kevin Feige's hands and minimize Bob Iger's role because he's meddling too much, because we realize the way to make money is let creatives be creative. And so Edgar Wright was kind of this martyr who he went down for everybody else. And I don't think we get the Marvel.
It cost them their Edgar Wright Ant-Man movie, but they did it in just enough time to save Ryan Coogler's Black Panther movie. Because there's no way Ryan Coogler gets that kind of freedom if Igor's breathing down his neck.
Yeah, I agree. So Edgar Wright's got this very unique. He's stylish. He made one of my very favorite comic book adaptations in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Is such an underrated gem. He did. He's done some movies with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. He's got the eye for what I think this movie needs to be aesthetically, but he's also got the ability to blend drama and comedy in a really effective way. And he also understands relationships like in a subtle way, and character development in a subtle way, where I think you bring Blue Beetle in, and maybe you don't even make it Booster Gold, but you make it Blue and Gold. And I think you get that relationship between those two guys as the focal point of the film and how they both grow from it. And I think that in Edgar Wright's hands, you're looking at one of the best superhero movies we've seen in ages, and a legitimate movie that we all look at and say, this is not just good superhero, it's good movie.
100%. I could not echo that enough. Edgar Wright was at the top of my list. And I have to say, Baby Driver came out last year. And I would say 2017 cinematic season was probably the third best. And I really do mean this because I do rank these because I'm a weird movie dude. 2017 was probably the third best year of movies we've had since the turn of the century. And Baby Driver, I would say, was easily in the top 15 of the best titles that came out that year. So Edgar Wright is responsible for that movie. That movie was a perfect blend of style and mashing up multiple genres and brilliantly sharp script, and just amalgamating all these things together into an incredible symphony of a type of film that we hadn't seen before, that was both action flick but music video but quasi-dramatic comedy at the same time. And his ability to do those certain things, but also his understanding of IP and the comic book world, like with Scott Pilgrim and his Ant-Man experience, he would bring – it would basically – like, this is kind of a feeble – connection, but I think it makes sense. It would be kind of like what Guy Ritchie did with the Sherlock Holmes movies, where it's like you're not just committing to a screenplay and to a director, you're committing to a person that establishes an entire aura and an entire way of establishing a universe. And you're saying, we don't just want you to make a movie. We want you to establish a look and a feel and an energy and a sexiness and a sharpness and an overall approach to and philosophy to absolutely everything. And that's what he would do, except he would do it better than Guy Ritchie, because I think Guy Ritchie may be one of the most overrated directors. But Edgar Wright is just, it's one of those, he's one of those guys where like he puts his stamp on it and you know instantly it's an Edgar Wright movie, but it's not kitschy, it's not cliche, and it is every one of his movies that you see is a fun but detailed experience. And if that's what DCEU needs, which is a character like Shazam to kind of blow the doors off the joint and say, hey, DCEU's coming back and we're establishing some things, and then take Buster Gold, who is kind of the antithesis to the Batman and Superman gritty real world type of stuff, and has a little bit of fun with it while still keeping its foot into some deep sinister realism, then give it to the guy that knows how to bend energy and bend style and establish something new that feels like it belongs.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, like we already said. So, man, I'm so psyched that we both landed on Edgar Wright. I feel like we both always have these good ideas, but when they align, I almost am like, oh my gosh, somebody call Warner Brothers. We've got proof that this is the right idea because we both landed on it.
Like here we go, guys.
With all the options out there and the varied experiences you and I have, the odds that we land on the same person are always so rare that I'm just like, guys, we did it. We got the director for the Booster Gold movie. I don't know what you're doing talking to Berlanti still.
Send out the back signal. We have the answer. Come find us.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I'm looking at his IMDb. This is totally off topic. Edgar Wright is adapting Neil Gaiman's children's novel, Fortunately the Milk. Holy cow. Okay, Edgar Wright, why is he not getting every job? Gosh.
Did he just blow your mind?
Man, I didn't even know this. I'm just looking off at the sidebar while we're talking like, no, yeah, I did Baby Driver. Did. Oh my goodness, yeah. Holy cow.
So Edgar Wright's got more awesomeness coming, which is good because we need to live in a world where there's more Edgar Wright.
Yeah, man.
Okay, right, so the other two, so the other two on my list is this is a little bit of a less, I shouldn't say lesser, but more of an underbelly type choice. This would be kind of like what Thor Ragnarok did with Tiki. So I've got Joon-ho Bong on my list. He is a South Korean filmmaker, And the movies that he's going to be most notably known for are his previous two films, which he made for Netflix. One was called Snowpiercer with Tilda Swinton and Chris Evans, and was a very underrated, good post-apocalyptic action thriller type movie, and had a very good feel to it. And then Okja, which was another great underrated movie from last year, which took Netflix and the indie movie arena by storm. I thought Okja was really good, and you could have made the argument relatively easily that it deserved to be nominated for Best Picture, but it was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. So I feel like if they wanted to take a chance on somebody that's kind of proven on making some edgier films that have some components that you would want to include in a movie like this, but then still have that outsider's perspective of like, okay, this guy's unproven and he's not going to bring in the kind of baggage of a fandom or anything like that. Let's just give him the keys and see what he does. I think that might be a fun choice. The other choice that I made is more of a safer choice, and he's definitely more proven than anyone else on the list just because he's been around longer with these types of films, is Matthew Vaughn, guy that did the first Kick-Ass movie, did X-Men First Class, did the Kingsman Secret Service movie, and did Stardust and all that sort of stuff. So he clearly knows what it's like to take an existing comic book IP and to understand that world and to throw it up on screen and still do it in a way that is so wonderfully entertaining and have all three components balanced naturally between comedy, action, and drama, that I feel like as far as following the formula of developing a movie like this, it'd be like riding a bike for him. But he's also said yes to these types of characters or reimagining types of characters that are different than what we're used to seeing. So it might be a good thing to put him in Booster Gold, but I'm still not sure that he's a better choice than Edgar Wright. Like Edgar Wright's probably the gold medal choice, right?
I think that, so I like the, I don't want to get it, the Joon-Ho Bong choice a lot. And I like Matthew Vaughn a lot. I think you ranked them, the order you gave them in would be my ranking would be Edgar Wright, Joon-Ho Bong, Matthew Vaughn. And the reason I put Matthew Vaughn third there is because I think we know exactly what Matthew Vaughn's Booster Gold would look like. And I think it's a really good movie that would make a lot of money. I don't think, and he could prove me wrong, I don't think it would be that transcendent new thing for the genre like the other two guys would be. And so I think that Vaughn is the safest pick, like you said. And I think, however, you're putting, and the ceiling's pretty high, but I think you're putting a ceiling on the project with him just because, and it's not that his brand is inferior, it's just that his brand is familiar. And maybe I think what the DCEU needs right now is to revolutionize something and is to set itself apart. And I don't know that he's the guy to do that just because he's already given us Kick-Ass and two Kingsman movies. And we've got a pretty good idea of what he looks like when the reins are off and he can do what he wants. And it's good. He's really good. So I'm not trying to denigrate him. But I would put him third just because I think the ceiling is there with him.
100%. I'm right there with you. And so it's like, I think what our driving force here, because we just keep arriving to this point multiple times, is saying that like, it's not just that we want to see a Booster Gold movie. We would want to see a great Booster Gold movie, both because we feel like the character is underrated and has the kind of traction and nuance to be able to deliver something like that. I think Booster Gold has potential to be what Iron Man or Captain America was for Marvel, which was, if we can remember 10 years ago, before we had all of these movies, the Marvel capstones were Spider-Man and X-Men. And then all of a sudden it's like they announced that Robert Downey Jr. is going to bring us an Iron Man movie. And yeah, everyone was excited, but it's also like, really? That's the hero they're leading with? And then after the first weekend and a bunch of people saw it, the roof blew off of the joint. And so it's like, I think Booster Gold has the ability to be that way for DC, where it's kind of like, yeah, this guy's got it. This guy's got it. And then you see the movie done by the right person in the right way with the right people. And you're like, holy crap, this is the guy. Like all of a sudden we have another component in Justice League that is legit. We have a guy that can carry his own movies, which is legit. We've got storylines and character arcs and sinister villainry that is legit. Like this this could be it. And so with that, that's a lot of weight to carry, which is why we want a heavy hitter, someone like an Edgar Wright, and a more well-known actor that can maybe carry with the punches as well.
Yeah, I think, and so I do want to make this sort of a pseudo sequel to our Justice League DCEU episode, because I think the idea that I put out there that I'm still sold on is that as wonderful as Batman and Superman are, we know them, and that at this point we might benefit from a less is more approach to them, and let them be the heavy hitters who maybe only get their own film once a decade, and otherwise we save them for the Justice League movies so that we understand the stakes in those movies. And I say all that to say, if you fade the big guys a little bit, and you don't, you let them be influences on the universe, and everybody knows this is Superman's world and Batman's world. Gotham and Metropolis are two key cities to Booster Gold's mythology. But you introduce guys like Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, and you let them breathe without the pressure of having to fit into Superman and Batman's world, and you let them grow and become their own characters. Then after maybe 5 years or so, you get that Darkseid movie that we need, and you stop putting his uncle in the villain role, and you've got Booster Gold and the Blue Beetle are joining the Justice League, and now you've got this awesome interplay between these two guys who have grown so much, and they're up there with the icons and the heroes and the people that, Batman and Superman are probably the two most defining characters for the superhero genre. And you put them up there with these guys who have just in the last few years earned their stripes. And you've got this awesome interplay you could have there. And you could really, with the pre-existing character development and the audience's already pre-existing knowledge of Batman and Superman, you could really play on that. And you could really make a really strong team-up movie that way. And I just think guys like Shazam, like we've mentioned, Booster Gold, some Martian Manhunter, some of the deeper dive characters in the DC universe, I think that's the way to go with this stuff, so that we can really start to let it breathe and take on a life of its own.
Gosh, why aren't we collecting checks from Warner Brothers yet? That's the ultimate question.
Gosh,
Jake, we've clearly paved the way. You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was free. Imagine when you give me some money, huh? Imagine what we'll do then.
Give me some money and some time, and we'll really mess this up, man. Man, so that's it. That's ultimately, if you want the perfect blueprint for how do you fix the Booster Gold movie right now and fix the DCEU right now within the next 2 to 3 years, that's the way you do it. Just listen to this episode. It's free. There you go. You're welcome, America.
Can I butt in with one more casting choice?
Yes.
Skeets the robot. I want a voice in there that we don't expect and that I giggle every time he comes on. So I need, because everybody else is going to have him be like Alpha off of Power Rangers, right? Like, oh, we went rah. No. I want every time Skeets says anything, drag this man out of retirement. I want to hear Sir Sean Connery speaking to me. And I want that to be, because if it's, everybody's like, oh, Booster, look out. But if he turns, there's like, Booster, get down. It's a totally different thing. And you just pepper him in there. Not a lot of Skeets. 3 or 4 scenes where we can all just giggle every time he speaks. That's my pick.
Okay, that is so, man, I was not expecting that. I was ready for you to drop like an Nziz Ansari like type of name.
Okay, yeah, and that would be great casting. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Something really obvious, but like, no, Sean,
Kevin Hart. Yeah, no.
You know what you did? Do you know what you did, Jake? You hearkened back to the days of the 90s, and you climbed that Agro Crag, and you won the glowing piece of the rock is what you did. You just went for it, man.
Oh, there's got to be an award out there for getting the Agro Crag reference worked in organically. So
yeah, there has to be.
I will accept that award. Mitch and I would be happy to attend your ceremony.
For sure, as long as there's a merit badge involved. I want to stick something on my lapel to show the world that I got this.
Can I confess before we close out that since I have been an adult, I have no fewer than 6 times, in all seriousness, with the money set aside in my mind, searched eBay desperately for a piece of the Agro Crag.
You know what, Jake? That makes you human, and that also makes you respectable.
I'm embarrassed to say how much that money has been sometimes, because there have been days that have been like, I am getting the Crag.
I've waited this long, this many decades. I have paid my dues. I've worked hard for this money. I will do it, and I will check it off my bucket list. Man, well, thanks so much for hanging out with us. So hopefully the Booster Gold movie saga will, get fixed here pretty soon, because Warner Brothers is clearly going to listen to this, take some serious notes, and run with it, because we know what we're doing. But thanks for listening to the Watching Comics podcast. We will be back at you next week. In the meantime, hit us up on Twitter for your thoughts. We want to hear your hot takes on the Booster Gold stuff and anything else that's going on in the Watching Comics world. We are at Watch Comics Pod, and that is Watch Comics Pod with an X. So head us up on there and check us out on watchingcomics.com. It's been real.
Yeah, thanks for listening.